What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV. And today I'm talking about Normal Things Season 5, or I guess Volume 1. In order to maximize revenue from multiple months of subscriptions, they needed to string this out as long as possible, with this not having a conclusion until New Year's Eve. So, Stranger Things, what do I think of the previous seasons? I haven't really talked about it much before. I think it's okay. I'm not particularly passionate about it. I like the first season when it came out, was riding that 80s trend of the time that didn't feel played out and kind of gauche like a lot of the 80s jerk-off does now. It's got a likable cast, a certain quaintness and charm, but personally I was much more into the concept of it being an anthology show, with maybe each season being a different cast of characters or a different time period. Because with this approach, after the monumental success of that first season and it becoming Netflix's biggest calling card, their main show, weirdly, the meme is that we've had, what, like 4 presidents in the time frame of this show, which isn't innately an issue outside of the fact that the main characters are children. So that lack of haste means that now the main cast of what in the original show looked like little babies now are lanky adults with 5 o'clock shadow, which again wouldn't necessarily be an issue in and of itself, outside of the kind of innate kind of humor of that. But if there was some kind of central plot or drive or quality of writing that was good enough to elevate these smaller issues, I get the vibe that this show is suffering from being as big and popular as it is. And not just oh, it's popular, so I have to dislike it type thing. No, it's more, I went back to the very first episode of the first season and the vibe's completely different. Again, not an innate problem, but it's more what it's turned into and the production baggage that is paired with that bugs me. Because so far this season, and I guess I'll talk about spoilers, not that there's too much to spoil, it has this bizarre production value that's simultaneously extremely expensive looking. They spent like $500 million on this season. But also at times things come across as very cheap or flat in a way that just doesn't add up for the amount they spent on this. Because we're at a point in this story where the scale is so big and there's so many characters, it almost feels like an Avengers movie or something. Even down to the way it's shot, to the way these characters are sacred. And I'd need some more evidence to back this up, but there's a bit of a conspiracy theory with a lot of streaming shows and movies that have been releasing in the past few years where social media spreadability is baked into the way the actual content is shot. I shouldn't call it content, it's supposed to be art, but it does kind of feel like content at a certain point. But the center framing thing, so when you're cropping it for, the central framing to make it easier to clip and share on social media for phone aspect ratios, which once you notice is quite recurring and common in this season. I don't know if it was in the previous one. I've only seen each season one time. It's kind of weird and cynical if there's any truth to that. And as we get deeper into this streaming hellscape, we're starting to see a bunch of the unintended side effects of moving into that model, where it's not really about brevity anymore, which cinema especially used to be, so you could show a film more times in a day, whereas now it's more about big excess blow. It needs to be as long as possible to try and have rolling over subscription services. And it does start affecting the quality at a certain point. But again, a lot of this, I don't think would be an issue for me if this latest season was more character focused or had more urgency to it, because everyone loves the characters, that's why people care about this show, but I just feel that they don't really know what to do with them at this point. So we're in a situation where it's an 8 or 9 episode season where every episode is an hour, or in some cases more, but it feels like very little has actually happened. They spend a lot of the time, most of the dialogue in the show is exposition. It's characters talking about their plans of how they're going to approach something. Another character will come in at the last second and have an addition to the plan. It's all high energy and they put in the crazy sound effects to emphasize everything all the time, because streaming hosts know that they need to keep things flashy and energetic to stop you looking at your phone while you're sat on your sofa streaming this stuff. And I'm okay with that to a certain degree. They're like exposition stuff as long as it's entertaining or feeding into something exciting, which for me they didn't really manage to achieve, especially considering how much real estate, how much runtime they've had for these first 4 episodes. I just feel like not much was accomplished. Falling back on these tired cliches, these love triangle tropes, friends falling out, basic melodrama stuff, they really don't know what to do with Eleven and David Harbour. That thread is quite uninteresting to me. In fact, unfortunately, the character with the most important role in the plot that has some reveals and somewhere to go is Will, who I remember in the earlier seasons when he was like a little boy being the best performer out of the kids. Like he actually sold the scenes he was in well. But I don't know what has happened because his performance is particularly bad and he's not alone with these bad performances in this show. Some of it's down to the writing. I do like Maya Hawke. She's got a screen presence. A lot of her dialogue is really corny. And again, corny in an 80s thing to a certain degree I'm okay with, but it doesn't really sell it for me. To me, the best performers in the heart of the show are Joe Keery. Dustin is really good as well. And the Sadie Sink Max character is good in there too. Everyone else else ranges from serviceable to underdeveloped, or like Eleven, for example. She's, at this point, quite a flat and uninteresting character to me, not only because of Millie Bobby Brown's performance, but they just don't have much to do with her. She's like a superhero now, that she uses the Force, and the scale is getting so big, we're now having these huge action scenes where there's military compounds being attacked by millions of CG creatures, and more people are getting superpowers, and they're using the Force, and it's all big and epic, which feeds into an ongoing issue I've had with this show, where I thought they missed a beat by not having as more of an ode to the 80s, which is the whole point of the show, to have more of a commitment to a practical, real tangibility to the world and the monsters, but we're in full CG schlock craziness at this point, which is some of my least favorite stuff. Outside of when it focuses on the villain, who's probably my favorite part of this, it's when I'm most entertained, is when this Vecna guy is on screen, with him being this overarching villain that definitely wasn't planned, and you're starting to see the ramifications of that in a kind of, it's nowhere near as bad as a Game of Thrones style of rushed bombardment that turned into eventually, but that was more of a whiplash because Game of Thrones had a quality of writing that Stranger Things has never even come close to. But I mean more the scale, the plot armor. That's a big issue I've had with the show. Another thing outside of my other kind of nitpicks that are all kind of adding up the more I describe them, is for this to work, I need to feel like these characters are in danger. And for seasons and seasons now, the amount of like fake out deaths they've done, I just don't care anymore when they act like, oh, someone's in danger and they're gonna die maybe, unless they've been introduced that season or there's someone that is replaceable. Main characters are almost never in any true danger or peril, which I feel like is a core part of the 80s horror actually working. The amount of times they've basically threatened to kill off David Harbour, but it never happens. In fact, it wound up working into one of the worst arcs the show has had with the whole Russia snow stuff. It's gotten weird at points, really messy and unfocused, because it's changed so much with them having to basically retcon or adapt this flimsy little story that was self-contained in the first season, but the popularity of it, they got to keep it going, they got to keep that ball rolling. So they got to explain more and more, they got to show more and more. So now we're at a point where this season opens with a de-aged Will interacting with Vecna. The de-aging is still creepy as fuck. But that stuff's very Nightmare on Elm Street, dream worlds, and kidnapping children and stuff like that. With the main crux of the show being kind of like weapons, a bunch of kids are going missing. This character, Holly, who I didn't remember in the previous seasons at all, but she was in there apparently. She was recast for this season, I think because they wanted this character to have a bigger role in the story, but she's supposed to be like 9 or 10, I think. The challenge of trying to find an actor of that age to sell those lines is probably why they cast someone slightly older and made her look younger. And this arc's more interesting, her stuff with Max and her links to Vecna, where the intrigue and the plot actually feels like it's going somewhere or has something to string you along. Yeah, so the mix of directors working on this is quite interesting. You have all ends of the spectrum. You have the Duffer Brothers, who write the show as well, who do an okay job, but then on the other ends, you have Frank Darabont, who is very talented on a couple of these episodes. And I think, unfortunately, Sean Levy's gonna do some of it. He's been attached to it, I think, from the beginning, but he's the most yes-man-y studio plant director that makes empty calorie fluff. But I don't think he's directed any of the episodes that are out yet. I think it's an upcoming one. Yeah, it looks like he's doing episode 6. But it's not like the show has a particularly strong visual style outside of the 80s aesthetic, with the costumes and the licensed music and everything. And to be fair, I do like the original synth score. Sells the tone well, complements it nicely. There's a nice range of sounds and emotions attached to it. Some of the reference stuff can be too much for me. Linda Hamilton is in there. They've done this throughout the whole show, having these 80s icons in there, with Winona Ryder obviously being a big one. And it doesn't bug me that she's in it. It's more when they're like talking about The Great Escape and then they start playing The Great Escape music, like in the score. Is quite weird. I just feel like we're at a point where we have so many characters in this show that it's lost an urgency or focus, and it's kind of fallen back on the type of filmmaking I'm just not that into. The scale stuff, the big CG spectacle, that doesn't really feel like that's where the story organically was headed anyway. This whole show has been a series of just throwing things at the wall to see what will stick, and when it doesn't, like the notorious episode where Eleven goes and finds the other superhero squad for just one episode, and then it's barely ever touched on again until like recently. Because what were they thinking there? Was like, oh, are we gonna do like a spin-off show here? Is that what they were trying to tease with that? But cancelled it with it. I don't know what they're doing. It's not bad or terrible in a way where I'd be like, no, I'm not watching this. This is unwatchable garbage. And I don't know how much is just like a sunken cost fallacy of, well, I've caught up now, why not see how it wraps up? But that's not the most exciting attitude. Hopefully it winds up getting a bit more urgency and excitement in the last few episodes, and maybe start taking some characters out, because like, you gotta stop treating them as so sacred. I want to be scared of this world and the fear and feel it. But you know, when they're setting up Home Alone traps for demigorgons or whatever they're called. Not for 1 second do you feel like anyone is in danger. And I'm just kind of repeating myself now. Those are my messy general thoughts on what we have so far of Season 5. Yeah, I liked the first season. I remember nothing about Seasons 2 or 3. Enjoyed Season 4 simply because it now has the focus of having this main villain, and the kind of corny lore stuff and the experiments gone wrong and all of that. I do like those kind of tropes. I just feel like this innate E.T., It, Stephen King quaint story about these D&D loving kids riding around on bikes is kind of jumping the shark when it gets this big and there's big action fight scenes and it's all exposition explaining these rules of how they're tracking people, and it's like there's something lacking for me. But let me know your thoughts if you enjoyed it more than me, if you're a bigger fan than me, if this is working for you, what isn't working for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next vid. Bye!